Good. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And to this, we're doing it a bit late today. Sorry, we're later than usual, and then later on the late than usual. This was supposed to, usually we do this at 5, and it's now 20 past 6. But we were, we were out and about today, out and about. So my name's Jonathan. This is On the Mat, and
I'm Dave. I'm with John.
yeah, Dave. For those of you who may not have met Dave, how would you introduce yourself? What's your elevator pitch?
Well, I'm a pastor, a farmer, woodworker, jack of all trades, probably. Something
Master
along
of all?
those lines. I've got a handle on a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do okay. Yeah.
Actually, speaking of, we'll just get into it. I went up to that house that Wooly, I think he did the design on, just as you go down Naskula, the one you did the doors on.
Yeah.
I saw the doors in real life finally.
Yeah.
Looks
Good.
totally changes the front of the house.
Yeah, they turned out really cool. They're based on a set of doors that I had built for the company I worked for back in Idaho. And they saw a picture of it and wanted a version of that. And so I just did it in mahogany and figured out how to make it work. Yeah, they turned out really good, I think.
Yeah, well, I think it sets the house off totally. Like, otherwise, it would just look like pretty normal house.
Yeah,
and it's just like a feature piece. As soon as you drive up, it just totally looks different.
It's just hard you're trying to figure out how to do everything here versus all the luxuries that I had in the U.S. as far as equipment and everything else.
Yeah.
It was significantly different to do things like that.
Is it hard dealing with, like, the wood must also be different, like the moisture content?
All that stuff. And so and especially in the mahogany, if it dries, you can get a lot of stuff at like 2 inch, 1 inch. If you have to do anything where you're splitting it or doing anything with it, it's going to really kind of warp and carry on. So I had a real tough time with the screen doors, keeping them straight. I had to actually replace them kind of right out of the gate. And so the screen doors that I made ended up, because it's an air-conditioned house, they ended up drying on the inside and had a lot of moisture on the outside.
No way.
The potato chipped on me pretty bad.
Whoa. So they just warp like this?
Yeah. And so, there's ways around it. Lumber you pick out and everything. So. Yeah. But as far as like,
did you source the lumber?
Yeah. We went to. I'm trying to remember who we went to in Vanuatu for the mahogany.
Okay.
Man, if I think of it, that's the curse of my age. It's like I forget everything the day after I remember. It's kind of a killer for this thing. They could have a free shout out, but I'm blowing it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Come on, that's why they gave you the mahogany, man.
They didn't give it to me. There was no giving. No,
giving.
It was definitely it was part of the whole deal.
I wish we could pull up a picture of those doors. They're so complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like all the multiple little windows, windlets. I don't know what you can even call them.
Yeah, and honestly, the way I did it in the U.S. is different than how they're here. There's a pretty significant difference. It's on Numa Hill Farms. It's on our Instagram page.
PNEUMA.
Yep, Numa.
Numa.
Yep, like the.
So we can get into that.
Yeah.
That is the name of your farm?
Yes.
Is it a business in Fiji? Is it a registered?
Yes,
thing?
It's a business. It's a farm. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
I'm a registered. We came in under Invest Fiji. They did an awesome job of helping us out.
Yeah.
Getting ourselves established as a business, getting our work permits, all of those things, and so we.
So is that the same? Is that a different thing than Investment Fiji?
Investment Fiji, yeah.
Okay, that's what. Okay. Right.
Yeah. They did a really good job of helping us out.
Yeah, I've heard they have good people in that.
Oh yeah. They're all about us succeeding,
Actually, it was funny because I think on Friday we read something about the TLTB was like hating on Investment Fiji because they're bringing in investors who don't use the leases or something like that. And I'm like, I don't know. It seems like it's the one. I don't know if it's a branch of the government, but it's one entity that people actually, I've heard consistently good things about in Fiji. Like, they're actually helpful to people, where most people coming in just are frustrated by every corner that you take is frustrating.
Well, it's
except for
if they do their job well, and they did a really good job with us, it's pretty clear. You know, they help set you up to succeed, and it's to the benefit of the country.
Yeah.
You know, even if our business, you know, we're a farm, so we're raising some cassava, we have some cows. We're not a great farm, and I'm a terrible farmer. But they helped us get established, and
Me too.
you know, and they've also let me add the woodworking part of things in, so I can build what I want to build when I want to build it.
Oh, sweet.
And you know, and they just made it a pretty easy thing, and you know, and then you have to work with an attorney and you know, get yourself established here, but you know, they do what they can to kind of make it go a little bit smoother. So yeah, good bunch.
That's cool. And so back to the name. And just so you guys know, this is also being streamed live. Sorry for the noise in the background. Dave's wife is here, and my wife is
I
also
blame
here.
Tina. She's the addition to the situation.
Hey, Steph, keep it down. And so we're live also. So if you're just listening to this on audio podcast, this happens on a veranda in my village in the middle of the jungle in Fiji. And so you'll hear cicadas, you'll hear dogs, you'll hear chainsaws because they're building a village hall, and kids screaming and women screaming.
Yeah, a lot going on around here this week.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And so we're also live streaming. And so that is so that Tui is also watching the camera, guys. So if you guys have questions you'd like to ask me or Dave anytime throughout the next hour and a half, whatever it is, please just ask them. Even if we don't answer it right in the moment, Tui will usually raise his hand to us, be like, hey, I got a question here. And that's why we want to do the live stream, all right?
Is he still going to be able to hear us with that cap that he's got over here?
He's got a pom.
He's totally freezing today. He's got socks. He's almost wearing a parka.
I know, right? I know.
It's a little embarrassing to kind of look on.
I came home and I'm like, who is this guy?
I mean, if he could have a snowsuit, that'd be the next step for him.
I know. He looks like Semi Randrandra right now. Okay, I gotta pull this up with the computer now. That is Tui.
Oh yeah.
Right now, right?
Yeah, the beard's getting there.
Yeah.
He's rocking it.
Right?
He's got a beard that I'll never achieve. That's one of the things. I mean, if you grow a beard like that, you should go for it.
This is what Tui looks like in the background right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you look like right now. Yeah.
Is he built like that though? Is that the build? The physique?
I think Tui wishes. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sure we can find a picture of him with no shirt on here. Here we go.
Oh my goodness.
There we go.
Man, if the girls are watching this is one way to bring the female viewer.
Yeah, that's
in,
actually what Tui kind of looks like right now.
Oh man.
Right?
Yeah.
That's pretty close, right there. Dude, the tattoos are so sick. I need tattoos. Make me look so much better. So, Numa.
Yeah.
Where does the name Numa come from?
Numa
P-N-E-U-M-A.
is Latin for air and breath. And so it is a reference to the fact that our farm is hot as all get out, and that when there's a nice breeze coming in off the ocean, it feels like the breath of God.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's the...
Yeah. And so when there's a mango tree at the top of our farm in the very top corner, that when you stand up there, and there's a pretty consistent breeze up there, and it just feels like, it's like the Holy Spirit kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice.
So the name came after you guys visited the property?
Yes,
then?
absolutely, because the people just don't name things here like that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So we...
I just didn't know if you came, when you came from the States, you're like, hey, whatever we do, it's going to be called Numa.
No, it was more like we had gone up there, we're looking at the property, we're standing under this mango tree. It's a beautiful day, hot, but the breeze coming in off the ocean, and it was just, it's like this is.
It's a good view too.
Yeah, it's a really
good view.
And it is just like the breath of God, cool under the shade of a mango tree, and full Jack Johnson moment and everything. So it's really nice. So anyway. It was after the fact, and we were trying to decide on names for our business, and so we kind of filtered through a bunch of things, and that's where we landed. Again, it goes along with things like what not to make your email address.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do I want to have to spell this to people over the phone?
Yeah.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, it's not even good for social media
Brilliant
and
in
stuff
its
like that.
brilliant in its concept, terrible in its inception. So,
Right.
Yeah, like a lot of good things.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because it has a lot of meaning.
Yeah. So you're here in Fiji and you're trying to tell people Numa, right? Pneumahil. Right. It's a mouthful.
Blah blah blah. Numa. What's
In fact,
the first letter?
I got it. We got a coffee bean peeler that we ordered, and came FedEx today.
Oh,
or
nice.
it's coming tomorrow. But I didn't get the email about how much we owed for our tax and VAT and all that stuff. And so I'm like, man, yeah, I didn't get it. And then I get the receipt gets emailed to me on a different email address, and I see why, because it was completely misspelled. Because it's like impossible to spell.
Sure.
And so,
Have you ever considered getting one of those fancy custom license plates? It just says Numa on it or something like that?
No, that's not the vibe we're trying to roll with. So, we're trying to keep it a little bit cooler than that.
Okay, got it.
And besides, like the red 1990 Toyota with a Numa-Hill,
I don't know, I like it.
I don't know. Maybe we need to do
Or
it.
decals on the side like our truck.
I think so.
Numa Hill Farm.
Between the rust, though, that's where we'd have to work it out.
Oh, did you get that thing fixed?
Hopefully by Sam's Fix It should have it done in this week. Hopefully, it's got the camshaft valves and lifters are all new in it. So
This week.
That's the plan. I'll be really happy to have that back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss my truck. So
Yeah, that's tough. When you would you choose having a truck over having it in a car?
Yes. Even though, when we first got the truck, we bought it through eBay, or not eBay, but through Facebook.
Okay.
This was during COVID.
Okay.
Right? And so when we got here, we were super happy to have it. It's a long story, good story. It's going to be in our book someday. We get it here, and it's just before the wet season. And so when we started driving it around, it's got a sunroof in it, and we didn't realize until it really started pouring, like the sunroof seal was completely gone. And so we're like
That's a BMW problem.
We have it. This is the end of COVID. We're going back to visit our families and everybody else for the first time in 2 years. We're under a ton of stress to get our house finished before we go.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
we're going to town, and it's just in like a massive downpour, and the water starts filtering through the glass, and it's probably one of the only times that I've heard Tina really drop one.
Oh, really? Yeah.
She just
Fair
broke.
enough. Yeah. Because it's like this is exactly what we need
She's
right
a
now.
pastor's wife. She just doesn't do that stuff. They don't swear. So
We can be honest here. This is a safe place. Nobody's listening.
I went from being a carpenter with a swearing problem to being a pastor with a swearing problem. So
You're cool. That makes you cool.
Depends
on the denomination.
Yeah, it depends where you hear me too.
Yeah.
Well, that's not cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know people could say that.
So now you're driving a Subaru. What is that? What is that even? It's a Subaru. What?
XV Crosstrek.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same thing you see in the States. It's just steering wheels on the other side, which will throw you off when you're repairing the air conditioning. So that'll bum you out. But no, it's a great little car. Love it. And
we often talk about how nice it would be to have a second vehicle, like a little car just to run around. Like the other day, we went down to Bua to drop off Tui, and it was like, or like a lot of times we just go into Lambasa and stuff, and it's like, we've always had two vehicles until this point in our lives, and so I mean we're lucky to have one that works really well. So I'm not complaining. This is like definitely like a third world or first world problem.
Yes, very much.
But when you run around a lot, you can save a lot of money if you have a fuel efficient. And it's just, I don't know, there's something about just driving a little car that you can just kind of fit into those tight little parking lots or parking spots. And
it was one of the things when we got this, it was pretty miraculous how we came up with it. And that was one of the stipulations for Tina, was like, I want something that I can park easy.
Yeah, for sure.
She doesn't want to have to mess around. Everything's just a little smaller parking space-wise here and than what she's used to in the U.S. So it was just she got to choose, and this is what she chose. So Yeah. But the one thing I'll say is like getting parts and for these kind of things.
Just turn the mic so this thing is facing you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. When getting parts for Subarus is a lot tougher here.
Yeah,
it's
for
just
sure.
expensive to do that stuff.
And it's funny in Fiji, like people are like, oh, Subaru. Sorry guys, and we might be losing all of the listeners because we're talking about vehicles, but we just talk about things that we care about and what's going on. So apologies, no apologies. But in Fiji, Subaru, people are like, oh, Subaru, or Subaru, they call it. Yeah, and so it's like, oh, it's not like a luxury vehicle, but I guess
Not
maybe
really.
it is. Is it a higher end
I
thing
think
here?
the thing I think is like for the taxi drivers in Lambasa, I think it'd be a great vehicle for most of those guys.
Yeah,
Because it just takes a little more abuse than like your little Toyotas and stuff.
yeah.
And it's got a little wagon. You can get a.
Is yours all-wheel drive?
Oh yeah, it's all-wheel drive.
Yeah. So you can get up the little like muddy,
Yes.
slick hills and
Yep.
stuff like that.
Yeah, it does really good. Does really good for that.
We used to have a Subaru Legacy Turbo, what is it? Legacy R or something like that. But it was a 2.5 liter. It was a WRX motor.
Yeah.
But a station wagon.
Nice.
It was because we used to go up to the ski hills. So like there's a ski hill called Big White, just probably an hour from where we used to live. And we would every winter, me and Stephanie would take a week off, and we just like ski hill hop. We'd just go stay in different, like try food, go skiing in the day, and just have like just the best time of our lives. And so every ski hill, like going to the top, is like switchback, so tight corners, and then you go straight, tight corners to make your way up the mountain. And like the all-wheel drive system in those Subarus
That's the way to go.
is built for drifting.
Yeah.
Like the fattest, most sickest drifts ever.
Absolutely.
I would get that thing wound up and just huck it, and just I don't know, just the way that it distributes power through the transfer case. It was just like you just feel everything. You just felt so comfortable going sideways.
They push a little though, like they front push a little bit, and so
right.
And that was the only thing. It's like if you can get them going, then they're great. Then you get that.
Yes,
I felt
you
like
have to get them going.
Like I felt like I had a really good handle on my Ford, my old pickup. Doing that.
Yeah.
That's like I had that dialed in for that.
Oh, so fun. There's nothing. There's I'm not going to try to exaggerate, but there's very little better than the first snow day when you have your driver's license in Canada. Like for me, I just every first snow day, I'd be like, Steph would go to bed, and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go for a drive, and she knew exactly what I was doing.
Well, it looks exactly like when you had that, when you guys were doing the
the
whole thing down in the mud. You just launch it.
Oh yeah. It was just
It's just so much fun to launch a vehicle into like a full-on slide.
So fun.
And just peg it.
Oh, the best. And so I just go around town just for like 2 or 3 hours, just like drifting, and then drive down the road. And
there is one car that's better. That's the Volkswagen Bug. I would say that.
Really?
Absolutely.
Oh, with all-wheel
because
drive?
it has all the it's just two-wheel drive. It's just rear-wheel drive, right? And so you go into somewhere and you hit the emergency brake on that, and it's got all the weight in the back end, and that thing just goes.
Oh, like an old one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about one of those new.
Think about who you're talking to.
Okay,
You're talking to
I'm like,
it's a whole
Dave,
other
come
generation.
on. I don't know if we can talk about that.
Well, think about it. It's got all the weight in the rear-wheel
100%.
drive, and you just go.
Yeah.
You launch those things.
Did you have one of those?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had a 62. A little 62. Yeah. Man, it was sweet.
62. Air cooled.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's an awesome little car.
Volkswagen
Awesome.
Beetle, right? Were they
Yes.
called the Beetle back then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 62 Volkswagen Bug. That light pale green.
Here.
Probably there it is. That's the one.
Wow.
That was exactly it.
Was it in good condition, yours?
That was beautiful.
Really?
Yeah, it was sweet. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was really nice.
So sick.
Freezing cold. Like so we had it in Idaho, right? And they would by the time you got wherever you're going, just then, no matter how far it was away, that's when the heater would actually start to like even remotely develop any heat.
Yeah.
So you never had a thawed windshield. You never ever like you were bundled up like you were sitting outside when you're riding in the car. And they leaked air and they were just terrible for but they were like you put decent tires in the back and the thing would go anywhere.
They're just so cool. Where we used to live in Canada, it just seems like in every major city, there's always like a Volkswagen Beetle club.
Yep.
And so every once in a while, you just see like 20 or 30 of them going down the road.
Super easy to work on. Like you could, if you knew how to do it, like pulling the engine out of it was super easy.
So easy.
You lift the car up around the engine, have the engine on a jack, and it was just like it you could get parts really easy, and it was just for me, it was the car that I learned how to be a mechanic on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh,
so
that's cool.
to do mechanic work, and so I pulled the engine. The first engine that I ever pulled was on that, and not on that one, but on a different one. And
Interesting.
and yeah, I loved it.
I did something similar, like as far as the first vehicle that I really went through, like totally stripped and then put back together was one of the original Mini Coopers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the old body
yeah.
style.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome vehicles.
Yeah,
But
I'll plug my dad's business. That's what he does. Is they rebuild Mini Coopers. They rebuild.
Well, that's what your dad does.
MGs. They rebuild Austin Healey's.
So they're the British guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna. People here in Fiji really need to know that SouthsideBritish.com it's a real deal.
Really?
Yeah. If they happen to get to Virginia,
Yeah.
in the United States, if they go to Danville,
Southside
Virginia, Southside British.
That's what your dad does.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
he's
Why didn't I know that?
83 years old.
What?
Me and my brother, and he goes to work every day.
Okay, so typically, in my experience, people who work on old dudes who work on British cars are always kind of pissed off and sour type of dudes. Is that? Well, I don't know. Okay, this is my experience because I've had to go and drop MGs
what I would have
off
to do is I would have to go to my brother and my nieces, and just kind of like, I think there would be a little bit. He's a little codgery. I think there's like a list of, like the older male attributes that's like coot, codger.
Yeah.
You go down that list of things in the English language, and he's definitely probably cootish.
Okay.
Like a little
not pissed off.
curmudgeonly.
Yeah,
I would say
yeah,
curmudgeon.
yeah.
That's a good word for it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, this just seems to be a thing with guys who work on MGs and Mini Coopers and Jaguars. The Jaguar guys.
Well, because they're always frankly pissed off, right?
Because the cars are always breaking. The worst cars. Like anybody who drives like an MG, you're just like just on your way to the shop.
Just when you think you got it dialed in, then it's like it's going to fail you
exactly.
somewhere. Yeah.
You ready to put that down?
Oh, nice. Thank you.
You got mosquito coil, guys. Because in Fiji, it's just, well, at least in Vanuatu, it's just recently started raining. We had no rain for like we had like one shower in the last 3 months, and then about 2 weeks ago, and a half ago, it was just like a switch, and all of a sudden it's raining every day. It's hot and humid when it's not raining. It's just like full on rainy season, hot season, just like switch.
And the
mosquitoes are like,
accordingly.
oh, hello, and they just all came up. Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
Man, and they love the Italian food or whatever flavor I am.
Whatever,
yeah.
I was standing in Bati today, and I was like in a spot, and I was just like listening to Lara's dad. He was showing me that their sick solar system that they got going on back there, and I was just like, oh man, my legs itchy. And I was like, oh,
Peter Burke is a freaking genius. That guy,
he's
another level.
Yeah, just so you guys know, there's a private island resort just not far from here. It's the only resort with access to the Great Sea Reef, or not with access. It's the only resort built out here that accesses the Great Sea Reef, which is insane. So it's literally the third largest barrier reef in the southern hemisphere in the world. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And so they just got smashed. Like first it was Tropical Cyclone Yasa in 2020. Yeah. Then obviously that was COVID time. And then they had a huge fire that burned up all the batteries, the tools. It was in their utility warehouse, and they lost everything that basically it took to power a resort, from tools and maintenance equipment, batteries, electrical. And so they've since rebuilt their solar setup, and it is so sick.
Yeah.
Like I walked.
It's another level.
So everybody, like most of us who are on solar like this, it's lead acid, right? Yeah. We're used to that deep cycle lead acid batteries that most of us will put. And then like the expensive, new fancy option that everybody sells is lithium ion, right? That's like, to me, it's not new technology, but it still like feels like battery technology is one technology that feels like it hasn't progressed as far as it should.
Also, it's like I'm just a rocket, we're in that rockhead zone of like, we have no idea what's going on in that whole thing.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah.
It's crazy.
And so his batteries, they're not lithium ion, they're lithium titaniate.
Yeah.
Titanium, not titanium, lithium titaniate. So where your lead acid battery, you'll probably get like 5 to 10 years out of. Your lithium ion, probably 5 to 15 years if you treat them nicely. And these ones, they have like a 50-year lifespan. You said?
Yeah.
50.
Yep. And they're small.
They're small.
Comparatively, the space they take up is so much smaller.
He's got a very nice Ferrari worth of batteries in those two walls.
Yeah.
Like, they are not cheap.
No.
I'm not going to say the number, but this setup at Bati Island Resort for the solar is
pretty amazing.
So sick.
Yeah.
And they have these 10 or 15 like stations. Each station has like 4 or 5 solar panels, and there's a GPS thing in it, and it follows the sun, its rotation.
Yeah.
So like in the morning it'll start over here, and it's not. He said it doesn't follow the sun because it can see the sun. It's because it has a GPS thing inside of it, so it knows where it is on Earth and where the sun is in relativity to the location. And then these things just through the day, they'll just...
Yeah.
And they have like a wind sensor on it, and so at 30 knots, so that they don't catch the wind, they'll just flip, like, instead of like being at an angle, they just go straight.
Yeah.
So that the wind will just go right. I'm like,
It's
dude, it's like, you go to Bati, you go to an island, you're like, I don't expect to have my mind blown.
No, he's just, and kind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was so funny because Laura was like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And I'm just like sitting there, and I'm like, yeah. Because I love that stuff,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, it's just the mosquitoes that were just destroying my legs. It's like, oh my goodness.
Well, it's not Alaska, so we got that going for us.
Oh yeah, exactly. Look, at least he should be in a rainy day in Alaska. Or
Yeah,
northern
actually,
Canada.
you should be, when we would go backpacking in northern Idaho, there's like certain little lakes. So you go up a mountain and these little cirque lakes sit
Like
up.
glacier-fed ones?
Yeah, the little glacier-fed lakes, right? And they don't get warm until like June, July. And so you'll come walking into one of those, and as soon as you kick the grass, it's like this cloud of mosquitoes comes up and just trashes you. And it's like you thinking, oh, hey, we'll go swimming, it'll be awesome. And then
It'd be awesome. It'd be fun, they said.
then they just come out of the grass and you're just running for the hills.
Oh my gosh. This is,
What's the topic today for
In OC? Oh, we don't really have topics. We're just kind of all over the place. We do have a topic that we are
have something we were
going
thinking
to.
about.
We're working it. We're getting it. It's we're be talking to. What's that? Yeah, we're workshopping. Workshopping, yes, and we are. Yeah, exactly.
We're being relational. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just hanging out, and this is something that we would talk about in person. So I know. Okay, we're sorry, we're not getting to the point. We're going to follow up on a reel that I made a couple weeks ago, and so we'll get to that soon. What's going on? Something?
Nehemiah saying hello.
Hey, Nehemiah.
Who's that?
It's Tatal's daughter.
Oh.
Chone ST Qatar.
Hey.
Not been with a long time. It's great to be seeing you.
Man, love those guys. Miss them.
Oh.
They're in Australia. So
Is that Chone Kata that you?
That's
you
his
often,
son.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I've heard it. You've mentioned him a number, like lots.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And so he's obviously a very influential.
Chone and
person.
Dee had a huge impact on us.
Yeah,
coming to Fiji, just how they've been to visit our house in Idaho.
That's so cool that his son's watching.
Yeah.
Dude, thanks for hanging out, dude. Yeah, appreciate it.
It's really cool. We miss those guys a lot. They
They
when
moved
we
to
came
Oz, you
here.
said?
Yep. They had an opportunity to go to New Caledonia, and when they came back from New Caledonia, somebody gave him an opportunity to go to Australia, and he's working with churches over there. He's all about relational discipleship and a lot of alignment on stuff
Wow.
and they're super cool people. Love them. Really miss them. I mean, we thought when we moved here, we thought we would be working with them a lot more.
Yeah.
But then that's just not the way. God works in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here we are.
Here you are
Yeah.
on a
But
live.
they're always invited to visit. That's for sure.
That's really
so
cool.
We miss them a lot.
One thing, what? Something? Yeah. Speaking of like influential people or influential moments, I really enjoyed the church service on Sunday.
Yeah.
I thought, is it Rick? Pastor Rick? Yeah.
Yep. I think Kennedy. Is that right?
Yeah, I really I really was blessed by his message. It was just cool that, it's just refreshing to hear a different cadence. And,
Yep.
you're not like, because I'm like, I want to hear something different, but then you don't realize till you're listening to a guy, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, this is cool.
Yep.
Like, it's just, when they bless you with
So
just something
it
fresh.
was really cool because he's like one step away from John MacArthur. Like he was an associate pastor, John MacArthur, at that John MacArthur's church in California. MacArthur has he's like a heavy hitter in theology, in preaching, and he was one of the associate pastors out there in California. And then
Wow.
the job he's at right now is in Kansas City.
Yep.
And so that's where he's pastoring. That's where Pastor Rick's pastoring right now. And they had come over for the Ambassadors for Christ 50th anniversary in Lautoka. And the people who organized it asked if he would like to come over and see us just for a little bit on Sunday. And so here, this little church in Limbasa.
Little, you mean little.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
very little,
Yeah, we were really blessed with, he teaches theology and expository preaching for which university in the United States, and so it was pretty cool. I was really sucking up the.
Yeah.
One of the hard parts for me is like less of the how. I need to focus sometimes on less of the how they're doing it than what they're saying. Sometimes I
Right,
get,
yeah. Because you're like, okay, this guy. Because same for me. Because I'm like, okay, this guy's worked under very influential men.
Yep.
He's very well studied.
Yep.
He has
teaches this. What
Yeah,
he's doing, he teaches. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And doctorates.
Yep.
I'm like, this is where I'm listening for the same thing. Style.
Yeah.
Like, what's his approach? How does he exegete the passage?
Yeah.
Like, how does
Yeah.
he, like that?
Absolutely.
I get it. And so, trying to listen for the content rather than the.
I have Tina's next to me, and of course she's got the passage he taught from was Romans 5, I think, verse 2 and 3. And
One that you guys
she
may have been over.
Well, she has it tattooed on her foot.
There you go.
Right? Because it's the one it's the passage that got her through the loss of our son. And
So sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
So when he was like, because he introduced it and he was like, it's a passage that's just been important to me over the years, and then he says the passage.
Yeah.
Did Tina like look over you like?
She was
no way?
she was ahead of him. He's like Romans, and she's like, he's gonna preach on what I think he's gonna. She's like, that's how she ruins movies. Like that's.
Oh,
her gig.
no one
She's
of those
she's that kind of
people.
person that's like, I know what's coming in the movie, and it's like,
Stephanie
I
was
bet
doing that to me the
I
other
bet
day.
they're gonna do this. It's like, he's gonna get run over by that bus,
Yeah.
and it's like, bam, he gets run over by the bus. That's Tina,
For
and so
sakes.
that's what she did with this thing too.
Yeah.
She was already crying before he even mentioned it.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, she was. I look over and she's just like, full on.
But before, like she was so convinced. If she knew.
she knew,
She
yeah.
was already like
Yeah.
breaking down.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And
She'd
then
call me a liar, but she'd be the liar.
I was sitting behind you guys a couple rows, and I kept seeing her probably 10, 15 times through the sermon, like lean over to you and just like give you a look, or like
Yeah.
lean over and whisper
Yeah.
something to you, and
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, this is obviously
Yeah.
a pastor you guys have wrestled with.
Yeah, absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's one that has been really meaningful.
What
to
is the
us.
passage again?
Romans 5. Oh man, 8 or no 5? Yeah, no Romans 5. 8. Was it 5? Hang on, I'll tell you in a second. We might have to go to the boss here.
Therefore, since we have been justified through
Yep.
faith, that's how the passage begins. To see you guys. People who are in the Bible will be like, oh yeah, that passage.
Yeah. 2 and 3.
Was he preaching on 6?
We rejoice.
And 7?
And specifically, he was really camping out on we can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know they help us develop endurance. Endurance develops strength of character. Character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. And this hope will not lead to disappointment. And that's where, when we went, we lost a child, and he was 20 years old, and we've talked about this before, but that was.
But yeah, don't be afraid. Like when we do this, because
Yeah.
I do this all the time. Like if you need to revisit it, because like I'm always like, oh, you guys know the story.
Yeah.
But like most
Yeah.
people who listen to this won't know
Yeah.
the story. So yeah, that's
Yeah, he was in a motorcycle accident. It was just completely out of the blue, and it just wrecked us. And
this is not like 35 years ago, guys.
No.
This is 15.
it's getting there. I mean, it's 14 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's times when it's just as fresh as the day that it happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes it surprises you.
Yeah.
But in that loss, in our my turning to follow Christ, I found hope, and in that hope, not only in Jesus that we find in Him, but in eventually, like as you grow into Him, like about salvation, and salvation and eternity and all of it, and so what was horrible, now we see good out of it. I was talking to Tina about something tonight, and it's like someone we know, we love dearly. Just by following Jesus, it's like she may have, by being a nurse coming into his life through some of the crazy things we did, that one person might be alive because of some of the choices we made, right?
Okay, come again with that.
Okay,
Sorry.
so there's choices in our choices to move here to Fiji
Yep.
and do what we did, and Tina being a nurse and the impact.
Oh, okay,
that she's
Tina
had,
being a nurse, yeah, yeah.
and the impact she's had on a couple people in particular, their lives. I believe that some of those people are alive because of the choices that we made.
Right,
Right.
yes,
And
yeah.
so this thing that was terrible, in some way, influenced our choices to be here, and those choices have led to the lives of others still being here,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I just love the depths of our Lord and that relationship and the surprising things that He does in those things.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so hearing
Wow.
His passage it speaks right to our some of the things we believe the most. Like I said, Tina, she has it on her foot and as a constant reminder of both her son and the hope that we have in Christ. And that's something else we're working on and in working with an NGO possibly here in Fiji about connecting people who are broken to Jesus, reconnecting them. We firmly believe in reaching the lost, connecting the unconnected, chasing the strays, these components of the three different components of pastoring, and I think those things really matter. And so,
Just got to dot the I's and cross the T's, kind of on it.
Yeah.
What you guys are working on.
Yep.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
super exciting.
Yeah. More to come on
Yes.
that. But it was a good Sunday. It was a good Sunday.
Yeah, he's a smart guy, super relational.
Yeah.
And he's focused. Like looking at the church in Kansas, they're like their vision statements about disciple making.
Okay.
And being disciples who make disciples is locked right in with what we believe, and it's a core belief for us.
Yep.
About the fact that you can't make disciples of Jesus unless you are a disciple of Jesus, right? And so the idea of helping people, first off, us growing in spiritual maturity, Christ likeness, and then helping others through relationship to grow in Christ likeness, and that goes back to that short that you had
Yeah.
about
Yeah. So we can get into it.
relationship.
Yeah. Is there any questions? Anything?
Just the one that set us on the right path. That's
Yeah. Thank you to Inose. Yeah.
all. Okay.
So the
I think, and I was led to ask you to like sit in on one of these, just from that, because what you said resonated. It resonates with me. It's again like one of my core beliefs: intentional relational discipleship, right? And specifically being disciples who make disciples of Jesus Christ, right? And you pointed towards the fact of like these relationships that we have in small groups outside of the church. Right, we have relationships in the church, our Sunday relationships, which are, how are you doing? Those kind of relationships. How are you today? Good, good, good. Shake hands, laugh, and then everybody packs off for lunch, and that's the end of it. But then you brought up the importance of those relationships that happen throughout the week. The ones where we actually start to live together and walk together and do those other things.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things I really wanted to kind of pursue with you even more, for the sake of people who might be listening. It's like, the importance of that intentional relational environment.
Yes.
And the multiple different relational environments that we can be in to help people grow in spiritual maturity.
Yeah. I'm just seeing if I can pull it up here just to give some context. I'll just
Yeah,
play the
yeah.
audio at least.
Yeah.
If we can.
Listen to that golden voice.
Yeah, just so
Say
that
it
you guys
so
like
well.
know what
The
we're.
Sinatra of Fiji, of podcasting.
Oh, Okay, where are we here? So I'm just going to play it for you guys. It's a bit long, but just so you guys have a context for what we're about to be talking about,
Yeah,
right?
good for us to have context.
Yeah.
Too.
And so what's important to keep in mind about when I make like short form content, guys, is like there's 3 parts, I guess, to making a video. The first thing is the hook. So you want to say something controversial to you like hook people in. Then you want to give it obviously content, and then you want to resolve the problem, right? This goes for movies or anything like that. And so I never get to say it all. It's more of like a conversation starter. So that's why we're kind of using it as tonight, right? That's kind of like, and so when you guys hear stuff like this and it like pisses you off, you're like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe you would say that about Sunday mornings or about pastors or whatever. It's like, converse about it. Let's talk about it. We want the feedback because like these are good conversations to have. Because
it's a great conversation.
I even have some questions for you just about like, you know, what we'll get into it. But I'll play this now. Okay. One of the things that annoys me the most about the church in general is this. A huge amount of our resources go to a very small amount of our time. Now, I'm talking about resources like money, time, or even volunteer hours for the people that help out at the church. What I'm talking about, guys, is Sunday mornings. So much of our church resources are spent on the Sunday morning service experience. What if we pointed people to small groups, to parties that we throw as groups of friends? I mean, if you're going to invite a friend to a function that has a bunch of Christian people at it, do you think they're more comfortable coming to a Sunday morning service? Or do you think they would rather jump in a vehicle with a bunch of friends who are all from the church and go to the beach together? I just think it's time for the church to think outside the box. Invite your friends to church on Sunday mornings, of course, but we have to think about what happens after the service. Where do we grow relationships? How do we ask each other the tough questions and actually have these deep conversations that bring us closer together, and in exchange force people to ask the question, man, where has this community been my whole life? Because at the end of the day, teaching is great, but what people are so desperate for is something more than just being spoken at. We want to be spoken with. We want community. And I really believe Sunday morning experience is great, but we need to spread our resources, time, volunteers, money, whatever that is, through the week. Let's hang out together. Let's have fun. Let's play games. Let's go to the beach. Let's do small group. Let's dive deep together. Because here's the thing, and I'm speaking from personal experience here, basically all of the relational depth that I've got from inside the church community has come from outside of a Sunday morning service. It's kind of like a sports team. Like sometimes the reason you want to show it on game days because you put in so much work behind the scenes at practice. Sometimes you don't feel like going to church on a Sunday morning, but you know that all of the friends and all of those deep conversations and intimate bonds that you created at small group and hanging out through the week, you get to reunite and hang out again at church and after the Sunday morning service. Okay.
Really good.
So that is the foundation of the conversation, I guess.
And when you the disclaimer that you just made about it, you know, that it's like part of that is for, you know, forcing conversation, right? That's when you understand that, and then you say, okay, we're going to enter into a conversation about it. It really opens it up and gives you a lot of freedom in what you're saying.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because
to take a snap,
go ahead,
just to take it as a snapshot is, it just doesn't do the topic justice, because I can't possibly say it all, and we won't even possibly say it all in like our conversation. So imagine like 1 minute 30 seconds kind of a deal. And so, I guess I guess one of the question that I wanted to ask you is what is the purpose of the Sunday morning service? Why should people, like, I'm asking it and we can answer it together. Like, why do we do community in that way? Big C church.
There's a biblical place for preaching and teaching, right? And so we see the early church gathered together, and they gathered together so that they would understand, you know, the Word of God better, understand the Holy Scriptures, that there was an element of a conveying of information that's really important, right? And because it isn't, I think one of the things, like if we just have groups that get together just as friends, and you know, if there's no growth in our spiritual understanding or spiritual maturity, then we're just friends getting together, right? If there's no intentionality behind it. If there's someone who's facilitating and pointing towards Jesus, and there's an element of growing in our understanding of the Word of the Lord, then there's a purpose behind the group, and that changes everything.
Right.
Sunday mornings are where we gather, and it's kind of like it's almost like the coach's opportunity to convey like the game information to the most people possible.
Got it.
Right. To me, that's my perspective. I look at things from like we've been through Real Life Ministries in Post Falls. One of the ways we've invested is in understanding that we're on a spiritual journey. All of us are moving through this journey together, and there's large venues. There's it almost relates to like different methods of conveying people, right? There's the ferry, which conveys a lot of people, or train, and there would be a bus, there would be a van, there would be a car, there would be a motorcycle, and each one of them has a different amount of people, right?
Yeah.
And so if we look at church as like, it's like the ferry, like the train or something like that, where you're conveying a whole bunch of information to a number of people. It's really focused on the head knowledge, right? And a little bit of, if you look at things from like head, heart, hands, right?
Yeah.
It's focused on the head side, trying to make it go to the heart and outwards, but you're really conveying information. You're conveying knowledge. You're conveying, an understanding of something. And then there's also, it's like that's where we take care of our kids. That's where we do our giving so that the church body can work on things together. And it's really about the place that you motivate the most amount of people possible towards one specific thing.
Got it.
Yeah. To me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great, perfect explanation. I just feel like there's a lot of pushback in recent times, I feel, from people feeling like gathering in a church as you would typically understand typically think on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Like pushback, like I'm a Christian. Like I don't need that though.
Yeah,
Like I don't
right.
need that part of Christianity. I don't like the church. Like the pastors make money and it just sucks money out, and the church doesn't do what it's supposed to be doing anyways.
Right.
When like widows, orphans, the poor, and so they just remove themselves completely from the Sunday morning experience.
Yep.
And then just end up walking alone, I guess.
Right.
And I just don't.
And there's a little bit of idolatry in that, when you start to put yourself first and how you feel, and it's not this simple, right? It's not that simple. I think the one thing that we're lacking in this world is nuance in everything, right? In political conversation, in any sort of conversation, it's nuanced. There's extreme one way and extreme the other.
Yeah, based on whatever your
and so
experience has been.
Speaking broadly, which is something that, in our small groups we try to avoid speaking broadly.
Yes, as we were talking about on Sunday. Yeah.
Speaking broadly, there's it's exactly that. It's like people see, it's like, I don't like being a part of the church, right? Why do I have to go to church? It doesn't speak to me. I know personally, which is super ironic, my learning method is not spoken word, right? I find myself drifting horribly during sermons.
Sure.
And yet I do
preach
sermons.
them.
Right?
Yeah.
But which is super ironic and comical in its own way. But like my method of learning is a lot of reading, and it's very interactive. But sermons don't really, it depends on the person. It depends on their style. It's like, I have people that I listen to that are very particularly, my style, and
Sure.
and it's they're people that I learned from, and so I think the large environment, that's really what it's about, and then there's like the bigger churches. They have the finances to do big things.
Yeah.
And you see that, and also like. I see that the church should be a place for people to go to for resources, for safety, for counseling, for all these other things too.
Yeah.
It's where the pastor, if he takes his role as a shepherd seriously, it's basically the sheep pen, where he sees his sheep every week, and he gets to determine roughly how they're doing, and I think one of the big things that's missing is the idea that You know, like the pastor, everything runs through him. Like, he's where the church meets the world. And that's not the case. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
like he's at the top of the pyramid, and he's the point where the church meets the world. And then his job is to relay information to everybody,
Delegate.
to help them understand the world and everything else. And actually, the pastor's job, it's almost like inverting the pyramid. He's to equip people to meet the world, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
He equips people to equip people to meet the world.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think that's missing, and that's where the relational environments come in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't possibly.
That's a bundle of words right there.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but we can break down. You just can't possibly do it all on a Sunday morning.
No.
Like, it can't all be done.
No.
And it's not just the pastor's job.
I think it's Exodus, is it 18, where Jethro comes to Moses and he says, "You can't do this on your own. Mm-hmm. You need to pick out guys."
Well,
to
he's
do this."
trying to help,
Yep.
like, lines and
Yeah.
lines of people
Yeah.
all
Oh, yeah,
day
yeah.
long. Yeah.
Everybody's got a problem, and it's like you can't deal with all this stuff on your own. You got to start to get people involved in the game,
Yeah.
right? And fundamentally, and so he starts equipping people to do the work, and that's what we need to look at from a church perspective. Of, we have a consumer mentality. We go there, we expect something. And Jesus does not promote a church that has a consumer mentality. Jesus promotes a church that is an active, everybody is a minister. Everybody is a disciple of him. And we go into the world as a force, as a team. And the pastor's job is to, almost exist like a head coach.
Right.
In equipping his people to meet the world.
Yeah.
And it's a big difference.
Yeah.
It's a complete mindset, a complete reversal of the current model that the church exists in.
Yes. So do you think that do we have any questions? Good.
Anybody asleep, you suppose?
Everybody. So do you think that there's something that we need to do different before we go down to the small groups level? Do different as the big church, big C church, Sunday morning church?
I think like head pastors need to develop their relationships with their associate pastors to a deeper level. And it starts with them. It starts with being disciples of Jesus, of the head pastors actually being disciples of Christ. Not that they're not, but there's an element. It isn't just about sitting in your office and consuming for regurgitating. There's an element of investing in your associate pastors and your volunteers' lives, and in growing your church as a relational body.
Yeah. What do you see in the Fijian Itauke church? That
it's rough. We've been here 6 years, and I feel like I can speak on this and apologetically, approach it from, I hope that I say it in a way that is kind.
Yeah, but you're just so everybody's clear. Dave was working with the local church, so he's not just like coming in, and we're not just like both of us. I attend this church right here once in a while, where we've been in the local church and around it.
And this is from speaking with pastors in local churches and observing local churches, and that there is there's a top-down hierarchical leadership that still exists, that mirrors some of the hierarchical leadership that exists in culture. Does that make sense?
Sure.
That's
so you've
those
taken
are big words to say. There's like a village organizational structure that moved directly into the church.
And what is the problem with that, or what are the potential roadblocks?
It creates a man at the top, right? It puts a man at the top and gives him not so much an authority. It gives him a position that is not necessarily, that's extra biblical, right? Sure. That there's a Taranga mentality, and it's a rough way of saying it, but it's just what I've seen, where he's separate, and there's a lack of reality. There's not a Christ likeness in the position, where Jesus is the man that sits down with the tax collectors and the prostitutes.
Yeah.
right?
He's the guy who makes breakfast for his friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 That has
Instead
a drink of water with a woman that he shouldn't be having a drink of water with, right? And that's a challenge. It's a challenge to not again. We're this is not everybody, but
Yeah.
it's consistent enough to be noticeable.
And I think, just from what I've seen, like, it's difficult because Fiji's very comparing Fiji as a society, a modern day society, to say England. Like, we're very, very much closer to eating each other than we are to, than like England was to doing such acts, to each other. Like,
Yeah.
Christianity is very new in Fiji, relatively speaking.
Right.
All right.
Yep.
And so that means that we're very close to, I think, and very immoral, unbiblical culture, and so we're fighting like the infancy
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Christianity in this
Absolutely.
place, right? Even though it seems like it's been,
Yeah.
many decades.
And you do what you're taught,
Yeah.
right? And so, and I'm not blaming the culture here.
No.
I'm blaming the people that brought the church structure. The United States is trying to undo hundreds of years of church culture and get to a point of, developing disciple-making cultures in churches.
Yeah.
And of course, it's like, when you come here and it's like, why is everybody wearing ties and jackets, right? I don't understand that because it's like, and then it's like, well, that's what they were told to do, and I wear a tie, because it's what we're asked to do, and
Yeah.
that's not the battle that I want to fight.
Yeah.
and-
Choose your battles.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. I'll put on the tie.
And people, have different thoughts about that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter. We do what we're taught. We do what we're told, and so a lot of the structures that exist right now are because somebody said so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not because Jesus said so.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Like, only pastors or only ordained ministers can administer communion. That's not in the Bible.
No.
Like, that is supposed to be something that I as a father should be able to lead my family in,
Yeah.
if we want to do that at home.
Communion, yeah.
And so, this belief, like, show me where, like, extra biblical, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the word you said, and that's one of those things that's like, that's extra biblical. It's not it. The good thing I will say about the church structure, at least inside the Methodist Church, is that so relating back to how relatively new our culture is to Christianity, or to this Protestant kind of movement, we need the biblical accuracy, and biblically accurate teaching is important. And so what the top-down structure allows for is for not wild theology to be taught, hopefully.
Yes.
And so
Yep.
this is your curriculum, this is the things that you can teach
Yep.
on.
Right.
And so, but because I've seen it, if people don't have curriculum, you get wild things,
Yep.
and people start
Yep.
coming up with these wild theologies and
Yep.
all sorts of different stuff. And so that is the good thing about the top-down.
Yes.
I think that's one of the only things I
Yeah.
can
It's
find
protective.
good. Yeah,
it's protective
yeah.
of, we're called to watch out for the wolves. We're called to watch out for the false teachers. We're called to do all those things. And I think it's important that the leader of a body is filtering and testing against the word and doing all of those things and helping his people to understand truth, and seeking Jesus in the word.
Yeah.
And seeking truth.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's stuff that gets added, and then I think where it gets also lost is in the desire for head knowledge as the evidence of your spiritual maturity. Like, the more I know, the more spiritual I am.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And because one of the things that I recognize here is that there's an incredible amount of memorized scripture.
Oh yeah. Which is super important.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. That's something I suck at.
I'm terrible, and I think, Tui knows more than I do, and easily, and part of that's because I got a late start in caring, right, about Jesus, about the.
But like
things
when
of
we're in a
his.
small group, like Dan will just be
Yeah.
like, it's, and I'm like, course
Dan
he did. Of course,
crushes it.
right? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, of course he did.
And he's
that-
like
yeah.
quoting books that I don't even know. And he's
Everybody
like,
looks
"What?"
at you, right? I'm right, right? And you're like, yeah, sure, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Dan knows it. It must be this game. So, but but does that qualify for spiritual maturity? No, because they will know you're my disciples by how you love, right? And if you have somebody with a ton of head knowledge, but they're incapable of loving others in real ways, then they're an empty vessel.
Yeah. By their fruit you will know them.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I mean, and I don't see and even in my own life, I don't see it as much as it should be. But with at least the Itauke Church in general, I do not see a broken heart for the lost in and around our communities.
Yep.
I don't see people more upset and wanting to reach their Hindu neighbors, than they would be about making sure the next soli is, goes smoothly.
It's heartbreaking.
And that's what upsets me about the church, I guess. And so, what do you do about that?
Well, it starts with a culture change at the top. It starts with the pastors recognizing that taking a look at what are they doing and how and are they actually, is that what they're promoting? I mean, we have to walk a balance of head, heart, and hands, right? Of knowledge, of love, and of action, right? And so we have to keep those things in balance. And in the church out of balance, any one of those things missing, and you're missing a vital component of what Jesus promoted for us. And so in order for that to change, it's a cultural change. The culture in the church has to change to be about, to step back, recognize that first I have to be a disciple of Jesus, right? Every pastor has to step back and say, am I a disciple of Christ? Define what a disciple is. Go to the Word of God. Seek out the definition of a disciple. We've talked about it before. I think one of the most casual, simplest methods, or simplest passages for identifying a disciple of Jesus is Matthew 4:19. Come follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Right? Come follow me. You're following Jesus. You're changed by Jesus and you're on mission for Jesus. Right? And the change part is the part that really hits. It's like, are you a changed person? Are you a different person than you were before you knew Jesus? And even in your church, are you and again, it goes back to, fruit in your life. It's like, are you filled with spiritual fruit? We had one pastor that used to say, are you fruity? And
Actually, I used to have a shirt that had the Juicy Fruit logo.
Yeah.
And it was, it said, Juicy Fruit, and then right below it, where the Juicy Fruit tagline is, like Galatians 4, whatever. Like, the fruit of the Spirit.
That's
So
awesome.
anyways,
I love that.
Are you fruity?
I love that.
Yeah.
Are you fruity? And, are you fruity? Do people know you by your love, by your peace, your patience, your joy, your kindness, your gentleness, and those things? And is that how you leading your church? What kind of relationships do you have with your co-pastors, with your leadership? Are you vulnerable? Are you transparent? Are you real? Or are you someone who, are you a Sunday morning pastor? Like, and you show up and you're a different person on Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
Like all week long you're one guy, Sunday mornings you're something else. I would rather be a mess on Sunday mornings if I'm a mess all week long. Because I am a mess. I'm a work in progress, constantly a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I fail myself on a regular basis as I fail Jesus on a regular basis. My expectations for myself, I'm never fully meeting my expectations as a follower of Christ. And I would want people to know that, so that they would feel comfortable in their growth, in their weakness.
Admitting their shortcomings.
Yep. Yeah.
But it takes a leader who can initiate those conversations by leading by example. And this is not just talking about, like, you have to actually be that person.
Yep. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you go up there and you're like transparent and people will figure you out in a minute. If you're not honestly who you are all the time, then people know that immediately. It's like, it's like you and Tui. It's like you guys are genuinely who you are all the time, right? And that's one of the things I love, genuine people, and I deeply distrust the disingenuous.
Yeah. And yeah, and actually that is, I mean, maybe we'll circle back to this, but that is one one thing I've struggled with in past small groups I've been a part
Yeah.
of, and am uh, starting to have hints of it again with our small group. I just know that there's some things that some people are going through
Yeah.
that they're, they've been a part of the group for a long time and just not letting that thing out. And I'm like, look, like we need to, at some point, it's like, if you're not willing to
Right.
be known,
Yeah.
I'm making myself known, you're
Yeah.
making yourself known, then like, what are we doing here? You
Yeah.
know?
Well, there's also like, so like we go into our groups, and so group dynamics are tough, right? Because we try to create safe spaces. We try to create places where people can speak without being overtalked, and all these. We have good guidelines for our groups, but still, you have 12 people,
Yeah.
right? And and I'm just using like the Jesus number, 12 people,
Yeah.
and it's still not completely safe, right? As
No.
much as we want it to be safe, it's not fully safe.
Yeah, no.
It'll never be fully safe to everybody.
Yeah.
And that's where like the threes, the one-on-ones,
Yeah.
there's a inverse relationship, between for numbers to safety, where the more people are, the less safe it is. The less people are, the more reality, the more transparency, the more vulnerability. There's one group we're involved in that over time, with 3-4 people, has been incredibly transparent and vulnerable. And I've seen, they've placed things on the table that are dynamite, and they felt comfortable with that. And it's life changing.
Yeah.
But like at a group of 12 people, there's always going to be a sense of, especially depending on the relationships in the existing group,
Yeah.
there's always going to be some level of walls, right?
Yeah.
That outside of the group, those walls will come down in certain relationships.
Yes. Yeah.
And try as hard as we like, I've done that. I was a groups pastor in the United States. That was my job. I had like 26 at one time, 26 groups that I oversaw.
Holy smokes.
Worked at, our goal was to try to grow the numbers, to like identify, equip, and release leaders, and encouraging like not only a group leader, but they would have somebody who is like their apprentice. And so
Yep.
you're always like trying to develop groups and helping groups branch, and at the same time, adding people to these groups that want to be a part of groups, and it's like they don't fit. I don't like them. They smell funny,
Yeah.
and all of that stuff. And group dynamics are incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And we have an amazing group.
For sure.
Our people, the people that meet on a regular basis, it's the best group at our church without question.
Represent.
Team
Alpha Male. I don't know. Is that what we're calling it? That's not what we call our group.
I'm waiting for Tui to come up with a good name for it.
Yeah. Oh no, we'll workshop it exactly. There's a passage that like really freed me up when I was, struggling with sin when I was younger, and that's where I think this is born out of. James 5:16. Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. And so I was just impacted very deeply by being obedient to this verse. Not that I'm a very obedient, great person. It was just like, okay. I had the example of some other friends who were also struggling with pornography. and they confessed openly, and then that initiated something.
Yeah.
And so that actually changed my whole life, that moment.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about being free from pornography now, or that in particular. It was just the act of obedience to being like, oh, wow, like everything changes when you're open.
Yeah.
And you get to such a more meaningful place so much faster with people.
Yeah.
And I think, circling back now to Big C Church, the Sunday mornings and stuff, that is something that I would love to see in the leadership of the church in Fiji, is that sort of leading by example.
Yep.
And I just, I think it's a saying by Leonard Skinner. I don't know, I can't remember.
Philosopher, American philosopher.
Yeah. I think it was him. I can't remember now. It goes something like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? That's the classic saying. But then he said, but if I put the horse out in the sun and I make it lick salt all day and I don't give it water for 3 weeks, I can almost guarantee that when I take the horse down to the water, it will drink.
Absolutely.
So basically just saying like creating the perfect environment for change or for action. And so I feel like, that is what we need to do, is create that environment, and that is up to us as leaders.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, when you get down to the church as a whole, like, of course, the new church in countries where it hasn't existed is always going to be, full of that change. But in existing cultures where the church has been, then you have the horse that doesn't want to drink water, right? They'd rather go out and do something else, right? And now we're starting to get to a point, I think in the United States, maybe in Fiji, that it's like these horses have been out in the sun, and they've been rode hard and put away, and they haven't had anything to drink in a while. And I think that there's a broken world that is actively searching for something, and that something, they may not want to admit it, but it's Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And because he is the water of life, and keeping that analogy moving, there's a lot of thirsty people.
Yeah.
And they're
Horses.
not finding
Thirsty horses.
Yeah, a lot of thirsty horses. And but where people are coming into the church, and they're looking for spiritual water, and they're just getting told how to drink.
Talked at.
Yeah.
Like
they're talking about, water's made of hydrogen and oxygen. And when you put hydrogen and oxygen together, and so they're being told, and then when you pour it into a glass, and they're being told how to drink, but nobody's helping them drink that water or giving them water.
It's like, now I know the molecular structure of H2O, thank you very much, but I'm still thirsty.
And how silica is made into glass, and all of the things that go around water, and then how you can pump it through towns, but the active giving of water to people, which is love. That's what we're washed in when we talk about Jesus, and Jesus is, his nature is love. And he says, you will know, again, going back to it, you'll know they are my disciples by how they love. And in that last part of John 17, it's like, they will know by your unity, your love for one another.
For each other.
And when we talk about followers of Jesus, people should look at us and they should see how much we love one another. And love is an active word. That it's not about attending church on a Sunday morning, right? It is how we live together. We talked about this the other day, and it's like, when we were here, it's like when we looked at the timeline of the church, and it isn't like anybody's got anything figured out, right? Because when we looked at the timeline, it's like by Acts 6, they're already complaining about each other, right? And then within a couple hundred years, you've got this Nicene Council that has to meet to sort a whole bunch of things out. In a blink of an eye, you've got everybody pointing fingers at one another and doing things 19 different directions and everything else. And by the time you get to where we are now, and there's like 300 different Protestant, and you can't tell what's going on, and so somebody outside of our faith looks at us and it's like,
They're so disconnected.
you don't even
It's
like each other,
Yeah.
right? You don't even like each other. What am I supposed? Why would I want to be a part of that? And so, it's what, like, organizationally and within the church bodies, it's like we need to be better about being in relationship as pastors, with one another, and then also by how we live our lives, other people will, that's how they'll build their relationships. They look at the pastors as, how we live our lives is what we're telling people to how they should live their lives.
Yeah.
And that's
Actually, it's a pretty cool story that I just heard on Sunday from Amanda, and she said that there's a pastor for what's up, what? Oh, okay, good, thank you. And there's a pastor in Raki, I can't remember his name. He's the one who's starting that church plant.
he's where they stopped and where they stayed overnight.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And so, oh man, I wish I could remember his name so I could give him credit. But he's been, called up to Reki. He's not from there. I think he's from Lautoka.
Yeah.
And he's just starting this church with 2 families. And one of the things that he does, like for one of the neighbors, Hindu guy, he said, like, how can I be of service to you? And the guy's like, well, you can take my cow to water and pasture in the morning and then bring it back in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And so that's what he does to minister to that family.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, that is like that's the kind of servant heart that Jesus had,
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that gives me so much hope. And it makes me excited about just our little church denomination or whatever we got going on, And it's like, oh, there's leaders like that inside of our church, and I'm like, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Like,
Me too.
yeah, serving each other, even with like things that seem like not important.
Yeah.
And it just feels like we Fijians, we have our thing, whether that's AOG or Methodist or C3 or whatever that church is. But like Indians, they'll have their own division. They'll have the Indian Methodist division, all right? And then the Hindus and the Muslims and Islam over here, and it's like, like this. There's still a lot of lost people, out there that you can just serve them.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to go and like be like, you need Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, give your life to Jesus. You don't even have to pray for people.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even have to go and pray and have an awkward conversation. You can literally just help somebody.
Yeah.
And people will notice that.
Yeah,
I mean, like, that's what we're
absolutely.
talking about, right?
Yep.
Is this, by their fruit you will know them,
Yeah.
And so that would be such an easy way to show people love. I mean, this pastor's doing it. He's just taking a guy's cow to water every morning, bring it back in the evening.
Yep.
The other thing that guy notices that man, this guy, something's different about this
I
guy.
know.
Like, it's not difficult, and it doesn't have to be awkward. It's just serving people.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just so important, that loving component, and for people to see that, and there's a lot of pastors that love really well, but again, it's getting them out of there's a number that just fall into that routine, and maybe they just forget their first love, and are just a little bit lost in like the organizational structure of things and how things are supposed to be, and they just end up in that rut, and this is the way, and that's not how you do it. This is how you do it, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
And also, like from a denominational standpoint, it's really tough to be a change agent in things that it's like, that's not how we do it. Right? It's really hard to do that, but.
And you don't want to just be one of these offshoot church plants because, like, I couldn't.
No, because
I believe in spray bottle baptism, not dunking or whatever.
Yeah, and it's it's something I stand behind. It's something that we talked about. I remember talking about from the very beginning, church-wide, for our ministry. It's like more churches are planted by division than they are by multiplication, right? More churches are built on offense, leadership issues, pride, other things where that's not how I'm going to do it. That's not what you're going to do. Well, okay, fine. We'll go plant a church and we'll take our family and we'll go do this thing.
Yeah. Who's
right?
coming with me?
Yeah, who's coming with me?
Yeah.
And instead of healthy growth that leads to like, we don't have enough seats in this place. We're doing 4 or 5 services a weekend. We can't do this. We need to plant a church in order to deal with the overflow in this particular area.
Yeah.
And that's the Acts Church.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Acts 2:42.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I would hope. Tina and I strongly believe that we were led to be here, and that's one of the main components. Is to help point people back to being disciples of Jesus who make disciples, and helping build relational environments in an intentional relational church. Intentional relational discipleship. It's what you were talking about in groups. It's like that piece of, we get together in a group, and you have an intentional leader, right? You have somebody in that group who exists to facilitate relationship with one another and with God, right? And their whole purpose is less about teaching, even though teaching is a component of it, and they should know what they're talking about. But it's not a lot of stress on that, right? You don't have to be a theologian. You just need to actually take a little bit of time to read the thing that you're going to talk about, maybe do a little like side
Blurb.
reading, a little something
Yeah.
to kind of guide the conversation a bit. But you have intent, right? And your part of your intent is to help build relationship within your group, to kind of guide questions and guide conversation and draw people together so that there's that vulnerability and that transparency, and help focus people on Jesus in the middle of all of this.
Right.
And that intentional leader, everything that especially as you move up organizationally in a church, like the intentional leader, from a pastoral perspective, that's somebody who's like thinking, like, this is where we're going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going towards Jesus. My whole church is going to. I'm an intentional leader, and every decision I make has like the vision and the goal in mind. Like, why am I doing this particular thing? Why do I have children's ministry? For this particular purpose. Everything has intent, right? And that's to help people grow spiritually as disciples of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so, and then when you move all the way down to the small group leader, what's their intent? Like, okay, you're an intentional leader in a small group. What does that mean to you? So, John, it would be helping you develop the skills to ask good questions, right? Jesus was a question asker. He adds so many good questions. There was teaching. They don't talk a lot about teaching, but they quote him on his questions, and so, he's a question asker, and he seeks to have us gain knowledge of him through asking good questions. And that's the same thing that we would want to equip our small group leaders with.
Yeah.
And so, because that, asking open-ended questions, not yes and no questions, facilitates relationship and learning. That's Socrates. Socratic questioning is that open-ended.
Not yes or no.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like that's actually a great. You guys might be listening to this and be like, okay, great. Okay, so this is all great conversation, but how do I actually apply this? What do I do if I'm looking to? Because the thing is, it is you. You are the church. I am the church. You are, and the church is not the pastor's responsibility. Like, we are part of the church.
The church.
The pastor's responsibility, or as a leader of the body, of the church body, is to, like we said, lead by example, and to do those things. But I think this is one great way that you can be part of this movement. Is just ask good questions. Ask, and that, okay, well, what does that mean? Just don't ask yes or no questions.
Yeah. What does that mean to you? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no more powerful question than reading a passage of Scripture. And it's like, we use 4 basic questions because I believe that
I was getting to this.
Like,
yes.
there should be, I'm not a big one on curriculum. Curriculum's impossible to maintain.
Yeah.
Right? Again, it's like, you look for, like, even in anything you do in life, it's like, how easy is it to maintain that? Like working out, right? Okay, if you set the goal, it's like I'm on Everest, and every 4 basic questions. What do you learn about God? What do you learn about man? What do you learn about yourself? And how can you disciple others? Boom. If you can't sit down and go through any passage of Scripture with those basic questions, with a couple follow-up questions. It's like, so if we got into, what was the passage you said from 1 John about sharing with one another, right? Was that what was it from 1 John? Your passage that changed how you deal with being vulnerable and transparent.
Oh, James.
James, I'm sorry.
James chapter 5, I
Yeah.
think, verse 16. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my
Okay, let's
first
break
question-
that down.
Yeah. What
Okay.
do you learn about God from that passage?
Okay, let me open it up here. Okay, so therefore confess your sins to each other, pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I would start out like, what do you learn about God from
What do I
that
learn
passage?
about God? He wants us to be in communication with him. Confess, pray, pray for each other. The prayer of a righteous, and the prayer is just conversation.
Yeah.
It's talking to God.
So when have you found found yourself talking to God, and what does that look like for you?
And unfortunately, it's usually when I feel like I need something from him.
Yeah.
And that is one place where I've struggled my whole life, is not the prayer warrior. I'm just always just in conversation,
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, it's usually when I need guidance or desperately, and confused about a situation. And so, yeah, that it's more of like a shopping list, I suppose. And the times when I actually really do have just great prayers, honestly, like when I put my kids to bed.
Yeah.
And it's just like, hey, God, I'm thankful for this roof over our heads because
Yeah.
rain outside, and we've got some mattresses in the room, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who don't have this right now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And so, like, if we continue on with that conversation, I would keep pursuing, and you're already there at so I statements are a huge part of like the vulnerability and
That's one
transparency.
thing
of these things.
we're big on.
And so you ask a question and you're working towards an I statement, because in that I statement you understand who the person truly is, and if they're actually being genuine, right? And you're listening, and so you're like, if you were just talking about we, us, they, those kind of roundabout statements, but you were already at the I statements, right?
yeah.
You were talking about you, right? And so I could pursue that a little more if I wanted to, just by like continuing to ask questions. So what is that? Like, I heard you say this, like as a listener and repeating back what somebody said. I heard you say this. What does that mean what do you mean by
And
that?
this is where curriculum doesn't work.
Right. Yeah.
And this conversation doesn't work if you guys know when you watch interviews and somebody says like, oh, that's a gem. Like they ask a question, the interview asks a question, person being interviewed gives them just like freaking gold. And then you can tell they just have a list of questions they need to get through.
Yeah.
It's like, next question. You're like,
My biggest struggle is like, hosting a group and Tui will say something or you will say something and you're like I have the memory of a flea, right? And it's like, I've got to grab a hold of this thing and hang on to it, until this person, like they're sharing something that's really important. And I can't get lost in the fact that, okay, they said something I really want to ask them a question about. And the other thing is like, you actually have to be genuinely curious about people. Like you're a genuinely curious person. When we come and do these things, you ask legitimate questions. You do the same thing in group. You're consistent throughout all your different environments. You're genuinely a curious person. And when you are a curious person and you want to know more about people, it shows that you actually care about them, right? And it's like, I just don't want to hold court here. I want to hear, from you about where you are on things. And, and if you were just like genuinely curious, but the hard part is like continuing to listen as they are continuing on into something that's really heartful.
yeah.
Heartfelt. And you're like, I don't want to lose that question because I gotta ask him this thing.
That's happened like 10 times in this our conversation today.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
okay, I'm gonna come back to that,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I haven't forget.
So we just have to trust that God will work it out,
Yeah.
and just just try to. And a lot of times it's like, I think I'm going to ask a question about this, but then I end up asking something about something else.
Yeah.
And the facilitation part of it is like, as you, what do you learn about God? Okay, so we start here. We start from a distance. This is what we learn about God. And then what do we learn about man? And so then you're talking about sin, and you're talking about the world, and you're talking about how Scripture relates to the world and other things. And then it gets to what does this mean to you personally, right? And so you take that passage, and that's where we get into like when you read this passage, and then you start to tell your story about your relationships with your friends and how it changed your life, and so we start. It isn't so much about learning this passage from James, right? Which will stick with us because we just heard a great story about it in somebody's life. But it's also, I learned that John struggles with this particular thing in his life. And he's overcome his struggles through this particular, through this passage helped him overcome. So the word is alive and it's active. And it's just, Hebrews, just what it talks about in Hebrews. It's alive, it's active, it's like a sword, it cuts through bone and marrow and to the center of us. And so when we start to engage with the word in real ways and we start to reveal ourselves in relationship, now we're walking together. You and me, we're walking together, and I know better how to pray for you, and you know better how to pray for me, and I know how to pray for Tui, But like this culture,
100%.
man, it is just like
Pulling teeth.
Yes. But at the same time, when it works, it's more beautiful. The harder you have to work for it, the more beautiful it is when it happens.
Yeah.
And because it's just super soul.
I've tried doing like small group stuff with some guys in the village, and it's and it's like, oh my gosh, so it's all just like, well, therefore confess your sins to one another and pray for each other, and it's like, so what is it? What do you guys? What stands out to you guys?
Yeah.
It's like, well, therefore we're supposed to confess our sins to each other, and so I think that's very important. You're like.
I think there's crossover guys. Like, that may not be for you and me. It's like I've tried to do the same thing with a couple of guys we had working on our farm.
Sure.
And the language barrier was rough. The positional barrier of getting was a little rough. From like an employer to guys working with us.
Sure.
There's all of these little things that get in the way of it. But you find your gems. It's like Koroi. I see Koroi being a kind of guy. Tui is a guy like that. They're outlanders, right, or crossover guys that exist in two different cultures pretty fluidly.
Yeah.
And so, like when they go, like if you had Koroi doing something here with those same two guys, it'd be a whole different conversation than you with those two guys.
Yeah.
And so part of our position is equipping people to do the things that I can't do.
Right, I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah, to bring them in.
Because I can't do everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not supposed to do everything. It goes back to the Exodus thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
Like, find guys that can do those things, equip them to do the thing, and let them go.
Yes.
And deal with the fallout. It's going to be freaking messy. But it'll be awesome.
One of the things that I was talking about in that video was because of a realization I had. I said, inviting some people to a beach day, and it's probably easier. You're probably going to get a higher success rate, a better strike rate if you invited somebody to a beach day with some friends than you would to come to church. That's what I was saying. And that actually came from, we did that. We went to Vorvoro and cleaned up, and that was like we were serving the Tui Mali and just helping him out. But then I came back, and the girl in town here was like, "Oh, I wish, like, I saw you guys were at the beach. I would have loved to come." I was like, "Well, it wasn't really a beach. We were kind of like helping. It was a work day." She's like, "Oh, it would have been so nice, like a change of scenery." And I'm like, "Duh, like, well, of course that is the perfect thing to invite an outsider to, or like to feel
how non-threatening,
right? Hey, come hang out with them. We're gonna work, and we're gonna just hang out.
Well, and
it's not gonna be like at the end we're gonna shove Jesus down your throat.
It's like we're gonna pray for our meal. We'll pray at the beginning of it, before we start working, that nobody cuts their legs off. And
Which is what we did.
That's right. And then we'll pray for our boat ride home that we don't run aground, and that that's pretty much the bulk of it. And then the rest of it was just sweating. But
laughing and
having a great day. and having a memory of a relational time together that was really meaningful and accomplished something, you know.
Yes.
Printing that in their minds. Yeah?
What's that?
Like imprinting that in their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Such a
Yeah. You just don't get anywhere else.
yeah.
You know, and so
Because if, you know, if I could go back, I would obviously invited her. But, you know, for somebody like her to have been there and just be like, that's when she would have seen unity.
yeah.
That's when she would have seen love and,
Yep.
and laughter and
Not-
servanthood, like, because there was no gain for any of us
Right.
other than, like,
Not condemnation, because, and I'm not saying this is
Yeah,
the case.
yeah.
Okay, I'm using this as an example, but not condemnation because she was pregnant.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Not condemnation because she'd been out drinking, you know, and somebody caught her or something like that and said, you know,
Exactly.
right, get away.
Yeah.
Right, and instead it's like, come, be in relationship. We're gonna fail.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we're going for.
Yeah, and to surround her with people who would have asked her, like, how are you doing?
Yeah, to
What-
inspire to Christ likeness. That's the thing. It's like all of us aspire to be like Jesus, right? All of us aspire to the purity in Christ, to sinlessness and that life, and we want to be that way. But the reality is you wake up in the morning and let's start sinning.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and let's see where we can, you know, and let's offend my wife. Let's let's
hey,
right out of the bat.
It's a little too personal. It might have happened recently. I don't do that. There. Yeah. Is there any
Let's frustrate our children.
exactly? Yeah.
Let's envy our neighbor's mule. Whatever it might be. I mean, you just go down the list of the top 10, you know, biblical top 10. Let's make no idols before our God, right?
Yes.
It's like, well, I love that iPhone 16, don't I?
Scroll,
I
scroll,
think
scroll,
I'm going to
scroll,
think,
yeah.
first thing I wake up
yeah,
is like,
yeah.
oh, that iPhone 16 looks really nice. I think I want to buy me one of them,
Yeah.
you know, and think about that all day long. And then you read, make no idols before your God, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't put the Pittsburgh Steelers ahead of, or the Penn State Nittany Lions, or wrestling, or any one of 100 other idols that I have in my life. You know, and yeah, so
Is there any questions? No.
man, we're putting people to sleep left and right out there. Is anybody watching? That's the question.
Yes.
Oh, good,
Yes.
cool.
So, to the two of you still with us on the live, yeah, we'll pick this conversation up again.
Yeah.
Maybe when we get back from
Yeah,
when I get back from Canada, you get
Yeah.
back from the
from
States.
faraway places with
Yeah.
strange sounding names.
And
That's a Willie Nelson song. You should look up.
oh,
It's an old song. Willie Nelson
Yeah.
and oh, come on. Doggone it. Faraway places with strange sounding names.
your flea memory is
Yeah, I know. It's killing me right
killing
now.
you.
Yeah. Doggone it. I'll have it for
Okay, okay. So, yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Thanks for
always
hanging
a
out.
pleasure. Love this.
Yeah, it's fun. And if you guys appreciate it,
Mentovani. Mentovani. What's his name? Mentovani.
Oh, yeah?
Is that the song? Song by Mentovani.
No. Oh, no. It's Sheryl Crow and Willie Nelson.
Oh.
Sheryl Crow.
Sheryl Crow and Willie Nelson. Faraway places with strange sounding names.
Sheryl Crow.
It's an old song.
Crowe's grandmother.
Bing.
I don't know. I don't think so.
See, look, we start talking about random music and people are jumping right in all of a sudden.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly.
We talk about deep, meaningful things. Nobody gives a
Yeah,
crap
people are
about
like,
it.
"Oh my
But we
gosh."
start talking about music trivia and people are in.
Give me a break. All right. Thank you guys for joining. And we'll
you.
be back here again on. Okay, I won't be doing the live. What did you say, Monday?
Friday.
Yeah, no live Friday and then no live next Monday because we're busy and we're making things happen. So thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Dave.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you, Tubi, on the camera. Our wives are
Tubi.
waiting to have dinner with us. And we'll see you guys again very, very soon. Peace.
Hey.